Strait Thunder-2025. That's the code name of the ongoing military exercises conducted by the Chinese People's Liberation Army in the middle and southern areas of the Taiwan Strait. The PLA Eastern Theater Command made the announcement hours ago on Wednesday, a day after launching joint military exercises around the island on Tuesday. Wednesday's exercises are designed to focus on subjects of identification and verification, warning and expulsion, and interception and detention to test the troops' capabilities of area regulation and control, joint blockade and control, and precision strikes on key targets, according to spokesperson of the Eastern Theater Command. China's State Council's Taiwan Affairs Office said on Tuesday that Tuesday's drills were a resolute punishment for Lai Ching-te authorities' blatant Taiwan independence provocations. What specifically triggered the latest reactions from Beijing? What has Lai Ching-te, the Taiwan leader, said or done since he took office last May? And how will the drills impact the situation across the strait? Are we going to see more conflict across this water? Welcome to The Point with me, Li Xin, coming to you live from Beijing. I'm pleased to be joined from the Washington, D.C. by Peter Kuznick, history professor and director of nuclear studies of the Institute of the Nuclear Studies Institute at American University. From Beijing by Zhou Bo, senior fellow of the Center for International Strategy and Security at Tsinghua University, and here in the studio by Rong Ying, senior research fellow of the China Institute of International Studies. The warmest welcome to all of you. First of all, let's take a look at the latest drills, which started on Tuesday and it's ongoing as we speak. The Eastern Theater Command also released videos and posters accompanying the drills. One that stood out is titled "Subdue Demons and Vanquish Evils." Performance features of military aircraft, vessels, and more forces are analogized to the abilities of beloved figure in Chinese folklore, the Monkey King from China's famous novel Journey to the West. Let's take a look at an excerpt of that video. I want to go to my guest, Zhou Bo, here for a military perspective. Why this analogy and what's new about the latest drills, which started on Tuesday, as I said, and is ongoing at the moment?
Well, I don't think it's anything new, but I just believe such exercises would just increase. The problem is with Taiwanese leader Lai Ching-te, who describes himself even in the beginning of his term as a pragmatic Taiwanese independence worker. So we compare with his predecessor, Tsai Ing-wen, I would say he actually is more stubborn, he's more reckless, and therefore I believe during his tenure, this kind of exercises will simply be seen more often, and the scale will become more complicated, because it is actually kind of a rehearsal for a possible worst scenario if we have to liberate Taiwan with force.
From a technical point of view, the drills were not given a code name, but today was given the name Strait Thunder-2025. Again, I would stay with Mr. Zhou. What sets the latest round of drills apart from previous ones? Is there's greater show of force this time?
Well, I don't. This kind of exercise, of course, is highly impressive. But from a military point of view, I believe in the worst case of liberation of Taiwan Island, we have to consider all kinds of situations, including the possible involvement of the United States and its allies. So, therefore, this kind of possible offensive attack it would be extremely complicated. Therefore, I believe only through a kind of repeated exercises, then we can find what kind of problems we might have, and we have to take into account all kinds of situations. So this is not only just kind of a symbolic drill, but it could be a real situation simulation. But having said all this, it would be misleading if people believe that this kind of use of force is inevitable. As our top legislator, Zhao Leji, has pointed out, we are still talking about a peaceful reunification. That is the most important part.
Absolutely. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But again, on the scale and the special significance, I don't know what sets the latest round of military drills apart. I want to go to Mr. Rong here. Last year, the PLA also conducted exercises, namely Joint Sword 2024A and 2024B, and last time was encircling Taiwan. This time, the drills were conducted over the island in accordance with the One China principle, leaving the Taiwan Strait between the two sides open. What's the messages there?
Well, definitely, I think we have seen that China, in order to maintain, safeguard its sovereignty, territorial integrity, and national unity, would like to demonstrate its capabilities in various forms and its determination against the context where the Taiwan independent forces represented by Lai and the external forces that has been supporting that Taiwan independence. And that's why I think in recent years we have seen that the military exercises with various code names, I don't know, but definitely it seems that this is with different or special sort of subjects in mind. So I thought that the code name certainly matters, but it does not matters in a way as it is. Rather, if a code name I'm looking for, I would like a code name like unification. Finally. We are joined, I understand, on the line by Joanna Lei, a former legislator on the island. She is with us online. Ms. Lei, how are the latest drills being perceived on the island? Are people getting the right messages that the mainland is trying to send?
Certainly, the Lai administration is sending an alternative message. That is, the Lai administration, with the aid of perhaps other countries, has the ability to fend off any potential military actions by PRC. However, people do understand that there are quite a few changes. The first one is the backdrop has changed. There is a new playbook, new rule. By declaring Taiwan as the internal waters, we can see the territories and the area of exercise is different. And then secondly, there is a very clear escalation or expedition of PRC's actions and efforts. But the most telling part, perhaps is being missed at this point. That Taiwan has a Hanguang exercise, which will commence on April 5th to April 18th as a tabletop computer-aided simulation exercise. So all of these things that's happening today should be included in the new scenario of Taiwan's local Hanguang exercise. And that would, at the end, send strong messages to anybody who has any idea of military actions or the potential peace and stability issues across the Taiwan Strait.
Let's take a look at the timeline for our international audience who have not been following what has been going on. It seems there has been a pattern of what Lai is saying or doing on the island, triggering reactions from the mainland. Let's take a look at what has happened since May 20th, 2024. For instance, when Lai was taking office, he said in his inaugural speech that the two sides of the strait do not belong to each other. And a few days later, on May 23rd and 24th, China Eastern Theater Command conducted Joint Sword 2024A in the Taiwan Strait, the north, south, and east of Taiwan Island, as well as areas around the islands of Kinmen, Matsu, Wuqiu, and Dongying. Now, later that year, on October the 10th, 2024, Lei Ching-te said, "I will also uphold the commitment to resist annexation or encroachment upon our sovereignty," quote unquote. A few days later, on October the 14th, China's Eastern Theater Command conducted Joint Sword 2024B drills in the Taiwan Strait and the north, south, and east of the island of Taiwan. Earlier this year, on March the 13th, Lei Ching-te labeled the mainland as foreign hostile force and launched 17 major strategies in 5 major areas to counter so-called threats from the mainland. Days later, a drill of the Eastern Theater Command of PLA was conducted in areas around Taiwan, and the latest wave of the drill, starting on April the 1st, was what we have been witnessing over the past 2 days, and the exercises continue. Let me go to Peter here, Peter Kuznick. If you watch international media, for instance CNN, you would get the impression that the mainland are conducting these drills randomly. You know, nobody knows what they're thinking and why they're doing this. But if you look at this timeline, it's pretty clear. The mainland is reacting to what the Taiwan leader has been saying, especially down the path of separatism. What is your take?
It's true that the U.S. media treats it as if this is occurring in a vacuum, and we know it isn't. And the thing that timeline leaves out is that Donald Trump has become president of the United States. And Donald Trump had an animus toward China throughout his first term in office, and he's still maintained that. Early on, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said we have to end the war in Ukraine as quickly as possible so we can focus on the real enemy, which is China. And that's been the strategy. You can say that goes back to Hillary Clinton and the Asia pivot in 2011, but this is now being pursued with a new intensity. And so Hegseth then removed from the Department of Defense's website the statement, "We do not support Taiwan's independence." They removed that in February. There was just an article that came out in the Washington Post detailing the National Defense Strategic Guidance. And what that's clear, if you read it carefully, is effectively preparing for war with China. We've seen this coming. We saw it with Admiral Davidson, who said we have to be ready by 2027. General Mike Minihan upped that and said, no, he thinks that war with China will come by 2025. Then we saw those ominous articles back in August. On August 20th, David Sanger in the New York Times said that the United States is preparing to fight a 3-front nuclear war simultaneously against North Korea, Russia, and China.
How crazy are these people, Peter?
Crazy, because the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists had an article that same day saying that some top nuclear strategists think the United States can fight and win a nuclear war. That is the ultimate craziness. So when I see these policies and Pete Hegseth's hell-bent anti-China strategy, he just visited the Philippines, just visited Japan. In order to bolster those alliances, Biden built up alliances in the Pacific against China, but now they're being put on much more of a war footing. So I'm very worried, and I see that Lei is becoming more aggressive in talking about independence, partly because he feels more empowered by the United States. And so this, I think, is becoming a very, very, very dangerous situation.
Yeah. Mr. Zhou, let me go to you. Is that how the U.S. the White House approach to the Taiwan issue is being perceived, being read here in China. We understand that that important sentence was taken off the website of the State Department, that sentence where the U.S. pledges not to support Taiwan independence. Do you think Lai Ching-te is taking advantage of the situation and trying to make the big as much as he could out of the situation before a more pronounced position is announced by the Trump administration on Taiwan?
Well, I would think that American government's official policy towards this issue would always be one China policy. But the question is whether we can really trust what they say, because President Biden himself gulped 4 times on this issue, although he was quickly walked back by his aide to say that they have not changed this one China policy. And in terms of American government officials, this picture is also very much patchy. Yeah, just now, as the American panelist has pointed out, all those irresponsible remarks by some American generals or senior officials. But there are also some other people, like the former American Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, Lord Austin, who said at Shangri-La Dialogue in 2 consecutive years that a war is not imminent or a war is not inevitable, which was echoed by the Australian Prime Minister Albanese. Yeah, so the question is, how could we actually believe in what they said? As far as Trump is concerned, actually, during his second term, he didn't mention much about this Taiwan issue, except to say that Taiwanese have to pay. So we don't actually know what his exact policy will be, because, well, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Well, Joanna, is Lai Ching-te being emboldened by Trump's second term in office? Because he obviously has doubled down on his separatist stance since he took office.
I think less of a Trump support, but more of a continued message sent by the U.S. administration starting from the Biden era. Because Biden era actually gave Lai Ching-te a lot of support, and currently his military and diplomatic representatives everywhere is still sending similar message. They haven't truly changed the rhetoric, and the playbook is still the same. So more of a support starting from the Biden era, and then the new development is using Japan as another lever. Japan is now sending military advisors to Taiwan. That will be a new signal sent to Lai Ching-te that he will have international support.
Is that why he is going down the path of separatism without thinking of the negative consequences? Because the mainland has said repeatedly Taiwan separatism means war. Joanna?
There are 2 theories. One is a lot of time when people have internal turmoils, they will have an external enemy to mobilize everyone. Tsai Ing-wen is working on the opposite end. He has a lot of internal problems, but he's using China as an external threat to mobilize people who supported his extremist position. Recently, his support and his approval rating has increased since China's PLA's movement about a week ago. So I think today he's quite simply using PRC as a way to support his own idealism, as well as using that to attack anybody in Taiwan who is promoting peaceful resolution across Taiwan Strait. So he's at the same time intensifying his persecution and prosecution of people who are saying we should move down a peaceful path rather than a military path.
Let's take a look at China's anti-separation law. Peaceful reunification of the country has been a principle of China, and this year on March the 14th marks the 20th anniversary of the enforcement of China's anti-secession law. Let's take a look at Article 5 of that law, which says upholding the principle of one China is the basis of peaceful reunification of the country, and to reunify the country through peaceful means best serves the fundamental interests of compatriots on both sides of the Taiwan Strait, and that the state shall do its utmost with maximum sincerity to achieve a peaceful reunification. However, on March the 14th, a symposium was held in Beijing, and Zhao Leji, China's top legislator, emphasized that the mainland strives for the prospect of peaceful reunification with utmost sincerity and greatest efforts, but will never renounce the right to use force. He also said that the mainland will firmly advance integrated cross-strait development and firmly promote Chinese culture. Mr. Rong, how should we understand the law and the message that has been sent out by Mr. Zhao? By conducting these military drills, has the mainland given up its pursuit of peaceful reunification?
I think that's a great question. I think Zhao Leji, in his remarks, actually, being made very clear that the very purpose or the very reason why the mainland has not committed to renouncing the use of non-peaceful means or military means, in that case, I would put it, is that if we do so, and that would in the end, that give up any means and I think chance for achieve peaceful reunification. And in other way, I mean, I can argue in other way that the very purpose of China, I mean the mainland, the preparations and the demonstration of that capabilities and also the resolution is to ensure that the scenario or the prospect of peaceful unification will be achieved. Well, the logic is very clear because the mainland has been always asked the question, since the strategy to achieve unification, peaceful unification, serve the best interest of that, why? I mean, you don't renounce, the use of force, because that the use of force or the capabilities to use again, of that force is not meant against Taiwan people. It is targeted at those separatist forces, secessionist forces like Ching-te, and those external forces that support Taiwan independence. Yeah. So this is the logic. I think this is the message, I think, very important, whatever the mainland is doing, and particularly in the context when we're talking about the military exercises and the capabilities that the mainland has been now demonstrated.
Peter, from your understanding, does that logic make sense to you? I mean, the fact that China is upgrading its capabilities, military capabilities, is to deter any potential secession or separatism taking place on the island of Taiwan. It is precisely for the purpose of peaceful reunification. Can you understand that logically from your perspective?
And especially if I put it in the context of the broader geopolitical battle that's going on. The United States and China are vying for hegemony in the Pacific more broadly. Taiwan might be the cutting edge of that conflict, but it's a broader struggle right now. The U.S. has been fortifying its alliances, AUKUS, the Quad, JACUS. We see 73% of South Koreans say they want South Korea to have its own nuclear weapons. Ishiba, before he took power in Japan, called for not only Asia NATO, but for Japan having nuclear weapons. And we know how close Japan is technologically to doing that. We see the United States selling F-16s and more weapons to Taiwan. We see the Marines on Kinmen Island, 4 kilometers from Taiwan. We see the U.S. building up all of its military capabilities in the region to counter China's growing strength. And so what I fear is that we're on a collision course. I don't think any sane person wants war, especially with the high possibility that it could turn into a nuclear war. But I see that especially on the U.S. part, since Trump has taken office, that all the stops are off now. And Hegseth has been very, very explicit about China not only being the pacing threat, but China being the enemy. So while Trump is obsessed with his tariffs and his trade wars, he's supporting Hegseth and other China hawks in their more and more aggressive policy. So I guess I see it in more ominous terms than do my Chinese colleagues, because I've been studying and closely watching what the U.S. is doing now. And I see what's happening with Iran and how dangerous the situation is in terms of the possibility of U.S. threatening to bomb Iran.
Do you see, Peter, do you see adults in the room here on the Chinese side?
Yes, I think that the Chinese are acting much more responsibly than the United States is right now. But I see a lot of fear, the same irrational fear that I see in Europe, this idea that if Putin succeeds in Ukraine, he's going to take over all of Europe. I see a similar kind of fear building in the Pacific now, that somehow China is going to be this aggressive force that's going to challenge everybody. But I don't believe that's the case.
Mr. Zhou, you have just published a book called Should We Fear China? Speaking of fear, do you think the world or ordinary people in Taiwan on the island should be afraid of use of force from the mainland, potentially harming them? What are these exercises targeting? Who are really provoking, escalating the situation?
Well, on this issue, actually, I have 2 points to make. First of all, I was asked by many people, how could we resolve this billion-dollar question? And my answer is very simple. Just let Beijing believe peaceful reunification is still possible. Because I've mentioned the anti-secession law, the last condition actually is that Beijing feels that the prospect for peaceful reunification is gone forever. Right? So therefore, we should, the rest of the world should let Beijing believe that the peaceful reunification is still possible. The second thing is that people always talk about China's sticks, but they forgot that Beijing has also offered a lot of carrots. For example, in Fujian province, actually, we have been treating Taiwanese people quite well. We let them buy, houses. We let the children go to kindergarten on the same condition, and we give them a kind of ID card, which are almost the same as those ID cards of mainlanders. So that is why Lai Ching-te is afraid. So that is why he wants to restrict the Taiwanese people's access to mainland China. That is why he wants to decouple Taiwan from mainland China. And that is why we are strongly opposed to that. And we send warnings through this kind of military drills.
Joanna, very briefly, 20 seconds if you can. Going forward, do you see the situation intensifying, meaning Lai will double down even further his separatist narratives, rhetorics, and triggering greater reaction, more forceful reaction from the mainland?
Unfortunately, at this point, the future is quite bleak looking from the Lai Ching-te's action. He currently has accused anybody supporting peaceful resolution across Taiwan Strait as working in concert with PRC. So that very strong stance tells people in Taiwan that the situation could be worse going forward. And we're sitting on top of a tectonic plate. The two tectonic plates are clashing and Taiwan is sitting on top of it. Unfortunately, common people have little to say when Lai Ching-te still holds the position of the leader of Taiwan.
All right, we will keep a close watch on the situation. The exercises are not targeted on the ordinary people on the island. This was made specific by the central government. We have to leave it there. Many thanks to my guests, Peter Kuznick, Zhou Bo, Rongying, and Joanna Lei. With that, we come to the end of this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin, coming to you live from Beijing. As always, you can follow me on Facebook and X using the handle Liu Xin in Beijing. On behalf of the whole team, thank you for watching.